Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Some past guests include Devin Howland in Fayetteville talking about economic development, Yoni Schmidt of the Keyrenter team talking about property owners frequently asked questions, and Kevin Evans of Liberty Air Services talking about HVAC systems, how they work and why they're so darn complicated. Today's episode is brought to you by Chris Lyle State Farm. Chris Lyle State Farm helps you protect your most precious assets and investments, whether it's your home and auto, investment rental properties, or other valuables. Call Chris Lyle State Farm for a quick and painless phone call to potentially save you double digits on all of your insurance needs. Visit diallyle.com. That's DIALLILE, or call his main office at 918-878-7771. Today's episode is also brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we are a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. Kristen, you know as good as anybody else that it's hard to get contractors lined up for a make-ready, for TRR, or for anything else, and that little time period, that gap, can lead to lost money for owners. It can lead to a bunch of headache and heartache. So Keyrenter, we line up our contractors in advance so that we can make sure that unit turns happen quickly rather, and that we put money back into the pockets of our owners, which is a shared goal of yours and ours. That's why no matter what rental you have, single family homes, condos, townhomes, apartments, we have the management solutions that you need. Go to KeyrenterPMC.com or email us at info@KeyrenterPMC.com. Before we start, I'll give a huge shout out to Yoni, who I already mentioned on our team, who originally met Kristen, and we just hit it off. And Kristen's been a great referral source for us in the past, and we love talking shop, generally speaking. So here goes. Kristen Simon is with Chinowth Cohen. She's got 11 plus years of experience, is a broker associate, and has 235 plus transactions, with 98% of her listings with 98% list to sale price average. She has a statistics-driven marketing approach and looks for results that are driven by those statistics. She also watches out for her clients' bottom dollar, not only in their immediate return on investment, which is critical, but also in their potential for equity growth over time. Kristen, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Hi. Hopefully you can hear me in the microphone.
Yeah, we hear you great.
Listen up. Okay.
Yeah. Let's get started way back when. How did you find yourself in the residential real estate world?
Okay. Well, I did about 14 years in retail and some retail management, and I was actually a manager for Saks. And it just kind of got to the point where I had some family dynamic changes. And my parents had always said, well, why don't you try real estate? And I kind of toyed with the thought of it, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know much about real estate. But then I started, going ahead and licensing, and jumped into it and found I absolutely loved it.
It's crazy, actually. In Texas, I was talking to a buddy of mine that has a property management company in Texas. It's like, I don't know, it takes you 18 months or something to get your license. Whereas in Oklahoma, it's the hurdles are much lower, which means that you have a lot of people that do it and never find success. And then a ton of people jump in and they may dip their foot in over time, and ultimately they may or may not find success. I mean, you've done 235 plus transactions. That's a solid track record. I'm excited to hear kind of what you see in this market, because you've seen a bunch of different market cycles over 11 years, or you've seen the dip and then through to greater times of huge appreciation. What are you telling your clients in these times of great market uncertainty? How do you advise them?
Well, I'll tell you, it's kind of just basic macroeconomics. You have supply and demand. It depends on the type of buyer. If you have somebody that's a first-time home buyer versus like somebody that's doing buy and holds, or somebody that's an investor, I'm actually telling them to press in, but press in differently. They need to do it through statistical research. Sorry, we have a little bit of noise right here. A little bit of statistical research and making sure that their agent knows the market that they're in. We have people that are talking interest rate. I think we need to stop focusing on the interest rate and start focusing on market or your pricing that you're purchasing at. People are kind of hemming and hawing, but you've got, June of 2022, we were facing 40 plus offers, multiple offers on a property, and you had to accept it in as is condition, writing 30,000 over list price, and the garage door didn't work, the oven didn't work, and hope to God, your roof was gonna not cave in because it was 25 years old, but you're gonna take it at 30,000 over list. Gone are those days. So right now we have a little more supply, less demand. So now is the time to press in. Now there is still sellers that want top dollar, and they're going to lose out because if they're not willing to negotiate. We have a time right now, and an exciting time, we can actually negotiate for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So I'm telling my buyers, this is not the time to pull back. This is the time to press in. Now you need to be smart about how you purchase and make sure you're in a place of negotiation. Make sure you're in a place where you're buying under market if you can. So people that are interested in being careful with their bottom dollar need to have an agent that's careful with their bottom dollar. And, it's just a different market, but I think it's very exciting. I think it's actually in our Oklahoma market, it feels more stable. It's not so crazy maniac. I'm personally looking forward to it.
It's interesting because in 2020, when interest rates were super low, even 2021, people didn't care as much that they were writing $30,000 over offers, or that they were accepting houses in the condition that they were accepting them in. And yet now, with an increased interest rate, they're super skittish. It's like, what's the difference with 30,000 over right now versus an interest rate shift of 3% or 4%, whatever it is? It's this, your math is the same thing. It's just that once you lock in a purchase price, not only are your taxes locked in at that much higher, but you have no chance to refinance to a lower price. Whereas with interest rate increases, you have a chance in the future at some point, I suspect, to lock in a lower interest rate. And that might be 2 years at 7.5%. It might be 4 years at 7.5%, but you probably will find a lower interest rate environment at some point in the future. Whereas the price that you paid 30,000 over is going to always be the price that you paid 30,000 over. So it's interesting how the psychology of that shift is, the interest rate psychology is so tremendous. And yet, people paying over asking wasn't at that time such a crazy thing. So you talked a little bit about, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I said it. It's a fear-based mentality.
Right.
Straight up.
Right.
And
but I mean,
it's not good for intelligent real estate.
If your cash flow works, even if you're just breaking even and somebody else is paying down your principal and interest and you're taking the depreciation expense. Let's talk for a real estate investor for a moment. Forget for a second the primary residential user. If you have your principal and interest being paid for by a tenant, and you're taking the depreciation, you're taking the interest expense, and you're taking the long-term capital appreciation in that asset, you're still doing pretty well, I would suspect. I mean, I bought some capital homes recently. I wouldn't say that they're cash cows by any means. They're brand new builds. My operating expenses will be low over time. I hope for the first 10 years, I've got nothing to do. And I'm just barely eking out the principal and interest payment with the tenants. But at the same time, I feel like, significant principal reduction and the depreciation benefit that I get makes it totally worth it. And you can still, you're outperforming the market any day just with those. If you say I'm in a 30% marginal tax bracket, then your depreciation pays way better than the stock market and with much less volatility. So I agree. We should be leaning in, and I've continued to buy through the pandemic and continue to buy now.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about the supply demand dynamic and its shifting nature right now. Where were we 6 months ago and where are we now?
Okay, so I can talk a little bit about last year. And again, I'm pulling stats from internet, so that could be, who knows, but it was roof stock. And what they were saying in the Tulsa market was that the price of the houses went up around 19%. But what was super interesting for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, the price of rent went up by 30%. And I'm
Wow.
calling these agents, leasing agents, because we had, every now and again, I'll have a call. Oh, we want to rent, somebody from my church wants to rent a house. And I have a hard time passing down somebody that I know, and I'm
Right.
like, okay, let's figure this out. So, and we call and they're gone. I mean, the houses are gone. There's not enough on the ground. So Tulsa market does not have enough lease property on the ground. And so the demand for lease property is crazy right now. And people that own lease properties are charging a premium for those lease properties, whether that's right or wrong, that's what's happening. And so to me, the stats, I mean, it's very clear. And I have another investor that I just met that's really seeking out luxury, like more of a luxury rental. So like a 4-bedroom around 330,000, something like that in Union Schools. They want that. And that's been their market. And they've been doing well in that market. So we've got people coming in. Tulsa's a huge hub. It was named by Forbes in 2019 as one of the top places for careers and businesses. And North Tulsa is just exploding. So we've got people coming in through Tulsa Remote, East and West Coast. They're talking about us. In Miami, I was at a conference. Right. They were talking about our city. And so we have an influx of people seeking out careers. And these people don't necessarily want to buy in Tulsa the first year. They want to get to know Tulsa. So these are people that have nice paychecks coming in that want a nice house for a year or a nice little condo downtown, and they have nowhere to go.
Right.
And then the short-term rentals are insane, the pricing on the short-term rentals, because people need something for 3 months because they're waiting on new construction,
right,
or they're coming in remotely. Same thing. And the demand is insane. Honestly, the demand is insane. And
so I to your point about the rental market being pretty hot, I mean, we generally see a significant slowdown between, I guess, the beginning, middle of August, as kids are going back to school. We see a significant drop off, and we all go, and then we remind ourselves that this happens every single year. And then it picks back up through the end of August to the end of October, middle of November. And then we see a dramatic fall off because people just do not want to be moving when there's snow on the ground. They don't want to be moving when it's 20 degrees outside and when we have freezes and whatever else. But we've seen a massive uptick in applications coming in. I just pulled the numbers here from my system. We've had 251 in Tulsa since January 1st, and we've had 43 in the first 6 days of February. So, we saw there was a more muted slowdown during the pandemic as people were like moving anytime they were coming in from all the programs that you mentioned. And so we saw a muted downturn, but realistically this year we saw, because of economic uncertainty, interest rate rises, and a bunch of other stuff, we saw a significant downturn, but now it's kind of blasting back off. And I believe this will continue through kind of March, April, when it hits a peak. And then, the peak really is kind of June, July, when people are really moving because their kids are out of school and they can make the changes that they need in their lives. So yeah, that supply demand dynamic. I mean, are you right now, from the interest rate rises, and we're talking about the first time that you're able to negotiate with sellers, are you seeing sellers back off in terms of what they're willing to give for TRR? Are you seeing sellers conceding on the price? Are you seeing listing prices drop, in advance of an offer coming in? What are you seeing?
Well, I've been working more with some sellers recently, and what I've advised them is, hey, we're not in a market right now where, and they're seeing it too. The ones that are realistic are seeing it. We're not in a market right now where you get to basically charge a premium and not give them any concessions for repairs. So I'm advising them, hey, build a certain amount in, budget that amount at the very beginning for your TRRs or for whatever repairs might come up, because you have a 16-year-old roof. You might get called out on that roof.
Right.
So there needs to be some prep work. So you basically, whenever you're selling that, think about what that budget looks like when you're, tightening your price down. Cheryl Chinowth, mentioned, hey, let them know to have that in their head. Don't necessarily get that information from them, because a lot of times it helps them build their own confidence in what their budget is and what they will allow. And they're already preparing to negotiate before they ever hit the ground. And I mean, we just had actual multiple offer situation, but the sellers were prepared to negotiate some terms of the contract. And we did,
Great.
and we had a little appraisal shift, and they were prepared, and they still ended up landing on their feet very well. But agents need to be talking to their sellers about this and being realistic with them about this market. We in Oklahoma? We're in a great market.
Yeah.
We're in the Midwest. So it's good. It's still good.
Do you think that, well, I should say, some people believe that if you come in too high when you initially list a house, that it will sit, and that sitting period is like a demerit. It looks like a black eye. And if you come in at too low, you might have a bidding war. I mean, there are multiple strategies for what price you should list your property at. Do you think that that's true, that if you come in too high, it just sits and people go, there must be something wrong with that house? And then when you lower it and continue to lower it, it becomes a deflationary scenario where people just think, oh, they're going to continue to lower it. I'll just wait a little bit longer until they do before I offer on it. And how do you advise your clients on finding the right price to list?
Absolutely. And that's where you really need to be looking at your statistics and saying, okay, what is this market around you doing, and pulling comps and asking your agent to pull comps. Because we've honestly, in the last 2 years, probably had a lot of agents that some of them don't even know how to pull comps. Yeah. And so supplying your clients with information so they can make a great decision. We are all going to have sellers that still want to list super high. What I've been telling those sellers, I say, hey, okay, we can try that, but can we, after a week, talk about, like, if you're not getting any traffic, that is, the demand for that price point, that supply and demand thing, the demand for that house, it's not there. So at that price, so we need to lower the price. Price trumps everything. So, right.
One thing that we saw though, in the kind of upturn of the market, was that the 6-month or 12-month backward looking appraisals might not have caught up with the price increases. So you might be under contract for a house at 400 and the appraiser says, well, it's worth 360. And on the back end, when it peaks and then comes down, they're looking at prices that are higher. So when you're doing a comparable market analysis and a seller is saying, I want to list this house for 400, and you're seeing that there were some that transacted at, whatever price per square foot, at 420, at 450, or whatever else. How do you look at your clients and say, well, the rear looking statistics might show that this works, but I'm telling you right now, the last month has been different than 5 months ago or 6 months ago. Don't they just say to you, I want it at that original price?
Sellers will do what they do. Yeah. So yes, I'm going to do exactly what you did and tell them, what I'm seeing in the market, and I will find stats and Oklahoma, Tulsa right now, I don't know if we are in a downslope. We're in a place where it's not like there's this aggressive, but we're at a place where we're negotiating. So I'm not seeing, in my opinion, I'm not seeing the prices take like a dive or anything. It's just more like, okay, you might list it in comparison with what is listed in the market. So like you said, something sold at 420. You might list it at 419, but then in 5 days, we need to be talking, because if you don't have traffic on that, then you are too high.
Right.
And and also one of the agents in our office, I thought this was really good. She was looking at days on the market. So if in that neighborhood, if you are fortunate to have enough comps that show that the days on the market are slowing down, that's a way to maybe say, hey, your days on the market slowing down. It used to be that you had 3 days on the market. Now we have 20 days on the market. Yeah. So that's telling us the price, you need to be more assertive with your price point. So we can start here, but we need to be talking in 5 days, and we need to move quickly, because you start plateauing after 2 months.
Yeah. So we saw during the 2020, 2021 kind of peak leasing season, we had owners that would come to us and say, what can we get in rent? We'd say 1450, and they said, great, start at 1600. And in that period, we were like, look, I'm here. I'm an intermediary for you between a tenant and you. I can start at 1600, and we have to move aggressively to push it down. And I can't guarantee it'll lease it at $1,600, but I'll try. And boom, 2 days it would go in 1600 at 1600. We're like, man, that's crazy.
Wow.
And it was like that for a while because demand is so high and the inventory on the ground, as you said, is just so low. But now we're seeing that change where if 1450 was a high watermark, we might still be able to get 1450, but we're not teasing it at 1600 or 1550 and getting traction on it. It'll sit at 1550. And unlike a listing, a residential listing or an investment listing, I don't think it looks like a black eye if you have, 15 days on market. It just, there's money that you're losing vis-a-vis what you could have had if you had rented it. So there's definitely an inflection point. If it's $200 over and you lose a month, and you've lost, the equivalent of, if it's $2,200 versus $2,400 and you lose a month, you've lost, a year's worth of that delta. So, it's we've got to be wise about how we price things, and we can't rely on too much on historics when those historics are changing at such a rapid rate. What areas of Tulsa do you generally cover?
So I do everything downtown. I do North Tulsa. I do lots of midtown. It's weird. It's like I like older homes. New construction. I do new construction, but my favorite is anything that has, I'm just going to say anything that has character. So I like stuff that, like I listed a house that was owned by a woman that wrote on the Tulsa race riots this last year. It was, and was like published multiple books, very interesting property. I'm one of those weird people that just really loves interesting property. So I love the dynamics of investment because I see it. I believe it's more of an art form. I believe even though you're talking cap rates and all, you're watching the nuances of what's happening. The Tulsa market is super dynamic and super fun to watch. I've listed everything from something that was in Skyline Ridge, in Fairview, to one that's coming up that's going to be over at near 27th and Harvard. That's a newer construction, beautiful home in the center of the midtown area. Yeah. And it's gorgeous, 5,800 square foot house coming on the market eventually here shortly. I have to be, careful about saying too much, but there's all kinds of, I love all different type of price points. I work with a lot of self-employed people. That's kind of a commonality amount. So I'll do, Jinx I do a lot in Jinx schools too. So it's weird. I'm over in South Tulsa too, but I think the commonality for me is not necessarily the houses, but the types of people. I work with a lot of people that are self-employed. Oddly enough, a lot of restaurant owners. It's weird. I'm just like,
how does being self-employed affect your ability to get a loan on the property?
I am really, really privileged to work with some great lenders. And I am also really privileged to work with a lot of people that actually have the cash is to purchase. So oddly, I've got a lot of cash buyers, got a lot of people that are on referral basis, and they're kind of like they might work with the same lender over multiple transactions and have kind of a good relationship with that lender and the backers for that lender. I have one that's a little bit more flexible and aggressive in the lending marketplace and pulls from several brokers and can sometimes pull after a year's worth of self-employment income, which is kind of unheard of. Usually it's 2 years. But so
how do you choose those lenders? I mean, how do you choose when you deepen your lending relationships, and also how do you choose your title companies and when you deepen those relationships?
They based on the personality of the buyer. So I'll have buyers that come in, and I've got one of my investors that's super, he loves a professionalism. He likes more of a traditional setting. So the lender I'd put him with would probably be more of a traditional lender. He's on salary, so they go from a salaried income. And then I've got another little couple that I think we have a mutual client that they're a little bit more of, they like to stay aggressive and see what's happening in the marketplace and don't mind an aggressive lender, a person that can kind of flex with them. And so that lender was a different type of, it's honestly different personalities for different types of approaches.
Yeah.
And a closer, I've done real well with our company that's affiliated with Chinowth Cohen Elite. There's a gal over there named Leslie, but over, I have another company I work with too, that their pricing for the investors they have some aggressive pricing. So I'll use either or, but it just depends on the buyer and the personality of those, and the seller's personality of those people. So
let's, you and I were talking last week. It was like 20 degrees out, and I had just come back from a property that we were looking at for renovation for one of our clients, and I wasn't able to get in. I snuck through the garage and I went into the attic and I popped down through a hole in the sheetrock. This place is down to the studs, and they're doing some bracing, some support work for a header that they'd taken out, or a wall that they'd taken out where they need to put a header. And it got me thinking about how you do 235 transactions and support your clients along the way. So I want to hear your great stories. What's the furthest you've gone to make a transaction work for one of your owners?
The furthest I've gone, there's one story that just popped to my mind, but one, I did try to facilitate, like even with the consulate in Morocco, to see if we could get a transaction done in Morocco. And the guy was not online at all. Like he wasn't using internet. So I was trying to like get a hold of him and see if the consulate, I've done like somebody's stuck in Mexico and I have to, figure out a way for them to notarize paperwork in Mexico. And we're trying to find a notary in Bristow. That is just insane. But one of the transactions I did it was my actual first listing. So the gal was the executor of the estate, right? So the gal that owned the house had died, and this was the executor of the estate that hired me. About a week before the closing, the executor of the estate died.
No.
So we had to literally, fortunately, they had it set up where it passed to the next person. But for about 2 days, 3 days there, we were in a state of like, what is going to happen? So like that, I couldn't believe it. How does that even happen? So it was on your
first transaction.
First listing ever. And actually my first listing, I take that back. My first listing was in the Rose District in Broken Arrow area. And it was back before that ever became a thing. It was ugly, barren wasteland of a place. I'm just going to say it. I lived there and I remember it. And I had a house on date that would be like probably worth a truckload of money now. And we could not get it sold. It was my first transaction. I was like, we could not get it sold because the price was too high. And I convinced her to lease that. And she leased it out for 5 years. It ended up being the best thing for her. And then she sold it. Then I sold it for her. So it's wild how, and I've done that before. I had one guy that had a house that he couldn't get the right price on it because he had not enough net equity. Leased it for a year, sold it after a year. So we'll do like some crazy things. What I love about real estate is there's the sky's the limit.
Right.
You don't have to do it the way your friend does it. That office is right beside you. You could do it different. Like as long as you're staying in the rules, you do need to abide by the code of ethics. It's a fun industry. You can
super tons of interpersonal dynamics. Let's talk about those dynamics and some of the negotiation. We're in this period now where prices have potentially stabilized, and we're negotiating. So let's posit a scenario. We are under contract for a property. You're representing the buyer, and the TRR, the inspection comes back, and there are more things than what had originally met the eye, I guess, right? There's a bunch of stuff that's come back. And let's not talk about, GFCIs. Let's talk about real, maybe not as far as structural issues, but the roof looked great, but, turns out there's a little bit of hail damage, probably not enough for a claim, but, stuff that it probably needs to be replaced in the next 5 years. Let's say hypothetically also that the hot water tank is getting older and it's not up to code. And it was probably up to code 20 years ago when it was installed. The HVAC only has a little bit of life left on it. How are you leveraging those inspections to get discounts on the property without destroying the transaction in its entirety? You don't want to blow it up. There's probably something that you can get, but how do you know how hard to push on a seller or a seller's agent when the inspection report comes back less favorable than you might have expected?
Well, it depends on the buyer, because sometimes you have that personality of the buyer. If it's like sometimes the first-time home buyers, they want the sellers to have everything fixed before we close. If I have a buyer that's a little bit more savvy, and and I shouldn't say savvy, I should say they're not scared of a little bit of elbow grease, or they're not scared of hiring a contractor on their own. I tend to, if I have this opportunity, or if I have a feel that I could possibly talk to them about this, I say, hey, do you want their contractors working on your house, or do you want your contractors working on your house?
Yeah.
And I say, why don't we talk to them about a price $5,000 towards closing costs? Because if you're adding the roof, the heat and air, and the hot water tank, start talking about what we think it's going to cost for you over time to hire your contractors. Because yes, maybe the heat and air wouldn't go out right now. And of course, you have your home warranties. Those are a shakedown. I mean, they can be good, they can be bad.
Yeah.
Home warranties can be good, but you better have, you have to have the burden of proof will rest on you. It won't be, the home warranty company will try to, but
they're in business to make money.
And they can be good. They can be good at times. So we have a nice gal at AHS that, tries to work with us and everything, but it's still risky. So so I do try to do a cash settlement. That's the best way. It also creates less liability on everybody, and the buyer gets to pick and choose their own contractors. If you have a buyer that's like a first-time home buyer, skittish, we try to get that on the TRR. And then I talk to the list agent and I say, hey, we do have a buyer that is new to all these repairs. So, and I try to keep that conversation going. The longer you can keep a conversation going, the better chance you have of it getting to the closing table. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. What if they say, we're willing to give you, we can see that the roof is old and will eventually need to be replaced, and here's $5,000 or $8,000 to repair the roof, but we're, the HVAC system and the plumbing, we're not conceding on that. I mean, how do you push a little bit harder without blowing up the deal?
it depends again on the personality of the person on the other side. You can kind of feel, it when they have you have a little opportunity. And, I'll have buyers that say, I absolutely have to have that plumbing done. It's leaking.
Yeah.
And I start talking to the sellers about how they, they're concerned that it's also a safety issue if there's water getting in behind a wall or what have you. Another way I do it, sometimes, like you said, we have to sometimes be creative. So sometimes I will get my own contractors in there to take a look and say, well, let's get a plumber in there. And so I'll get my own plumber in there. And I've got a couple of I've got a plumber that's very well priced that the general plumbing fixes he can sometimes do. Sometimes you're blowing it up over something stupid.
Right.
That's not a hard fix.
A client is like, the toilet is leaking at the base of the toilet. This is horrendous. I can't believe
this.
The wax
ring.
A wax ring, or replace the toilet. Maybe there's a crack in the porcelain, but that's like a $200 fix plus, a plumber's time of an hour or 2 hours, or even a maintenance guy. So it can, sometimes people can
just get it done.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
And I'll
really want to go. I tell the list agent, I'm like, do you want to go back out on the market? And then, oh, by the way, this inspection, I'm going to make sure that it's on the disclosure. That's when I start getting, if I'm really pushing, I'm like, oh, so I'm just letting you know that if you go back on the market, we will be making sure that this disclosure is attached to that transaction.
So is an agent, Is an agent required if there is inspections and it falls out of contract? Are you required to post those inspections, or you just have to like now acknowledge that there's a plumbing issue that you know of?
You're supposed to add to that disclosure anything that you have knowledge
Right.
of. If the actual bona fide professional has stated that there's an issue, you're supposed to add that to your disclosure.
Yeah. So
And
that looks
I
real
know
bad if you
that
go back on market.
90% of people don't do that. And I get that. I was honestly telling an attorney today, 90% of those disclosures don't have that stuff, but you're supposed to. And so if you kind of let them know, hey, if you go back out on the market, it'd be smarter for you to work with my buyers, okay, and get this to the closing table than to have to go back. Just even if they don't have the disclosure, they have to go back on the market and explain.
Yeah. Why it didn't close.
And then you start painting that in that agent's mind of what they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents were under contract for a house, and it busted because they wouldn't concede on a bunch of the TRR stuff, and I think it ended up going back on the market like $60,000 less, and my parents just wanted a $20,000 concession to fix some wood rot underneath some siding on the exterior, and they would have been so much better off. The seller would have been so much better off just making that $20,000 concession. Crazy.
Yeah.
Who do you appreciate or respect in the industry? What podcasts do you listen to? Kind of where do you go for industry information and the like?
I probably do enough research to where I'm dangerous because like I'll look everywhere from Facebook to online. I'm going to be honest, I don't do a lot of podcasts. As you know, I kind of do more online research. I really love checking out what George Kaiser's do. So I like kind of stalk George Kaiser's stuff because I'm
how do you find his stuff?
I just go on the foundation website.
Cool.
Okay, so I have physically gone into the office to talk to them, and I was like a person that was like, "Hey, I want to know more about this," and they looked at me like I was crazy. But anyway, I'm super interested because I've kind of like looked and mapped out what he's doing along the North Tulsa perimeter, like Kendall Whittier on up to I want to say it's like Lewis. I don't have the exact. I also really love meeting investors. There's a guy named Andrew over in the Kendall Whittier area that does some really cool stuff. He's opened up some businesses over there and is big proponent of he purchases property over there and cleans them up. And so I follow you guys. I follow kind of what are they doing in the marketplace. I just kind of see what people are doing. I'm trying to think of
who's Andrew? What businesses is Andrew open? He's not responsible for that for the bar over there, like just west of.
So yeah, he's in Party Supply 473.
473. Yeah,
but he doesn't own that anymore. But I love that. Yes,
wow.
I'd let, and I have to be. I probably might be saying too much, but like honestly, it's neat to watch when you see just those businesses opening up. She Brews is over there, and that's a really cool little place that is funds women that are coming out of recovery or in recovery, coming out of everything from prison to an incredible organization. And Tulsa's really taking that type of thing seriously. And I think it's amazing to watch Tulsa trying to fund people into housing. And it's just amazing. I love seeing that kind of thing.
Kendall Whittier has seen a wholesale transformation over the past 5 years. Yeah. And that is an amazing neighborhood transformation. 6th Street, the stuff that's on the north there, there's some stuff, there are apartments there that are beautifully managed and run, and they're half less than or equal to 60%, 50% of the average median income. The stuff that Capital Homes has done to create, more of a neighborhood of home ownership as opposed to rental, and then there are a bunch of rentals in there still that are beautiful. People renovating great stuff, and then of course what Lobeck Taylor has done at Mother Road Market on the southwest corner of 11th and Lewis. It transforms the neighborhood itself, and so everything together, including what George Kaiser's helped with and the city has helped with, has made that neighborhood amazing.
Yeah, 11th is the new 15th, right? So So,
Right.
and then you have Reservoir Hill. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Nelson Zuleta, who built that huge contemporary on top of the hill.
Yeah.
That was featured in the Tulsa People. That house is insane, and it's just, cliff dives off, and you see the Tulsa city, like the sky, the skyline,
Yeah.
and you just hang a left, and you're on Tisdale, and you're 3 minutes to downtown.
Yep.
So that little neighborhood hub is like super fun, and so I just love watching what's happening over there. It's just so, and it tells me that Tulsa's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. I love that Reservoir Hill area. It's beautiful.
It's
up there,
fun.
for sure.
Yes.
Kristen Simon with Chinowth and Cohen. She's got 11 plus years of experience. She's a broker associate, and she's done 235 plus transactions, which is amazing. She has this I can't even say this, statistics driven marketing and results oriented approach. She watches out for her clients' bottom dollar, not only in their immediate return, but also their potential for equity growth over time, as we heard in that story where people should rent for a few years before they actually build up enough so they can sell it for a profit. Kristen, we really appreciate you being on the pod.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.